Our new chapter is about percents. Be paying attention when you're, go with your parents to the grocery store and think about how taxes work. When you go to a restaurant, think about how the bill works and the tip and the tax. Ask your parents about these things so that when we get to it, you'll have a leg up on it because you'll understand a little bit better. All right, don't forget to put your name. And this is funny. Hopefully you get it. All right, so section 1 is just kind of understanding percents. So a percent is a ratio that compares a quantity to 100. I was watching a video today and I was just kind of blown away. So percent, if we spread it out, percent. So per is where we put like our fraction by, right? Cent, root word, means what? We see cent in centimeters. We see cent in centurion when we studied about like the Roman army. We see cent in cents. How many cents in a dollar? The root word cent means 100. So percent is a unit rate, which means out of 100 per cent. So 28% means 28 per 100. So as a fraction, 28 over 100. All right, so if you have a percent and you want to express it as a fraction, just like we showed, put the percent number as the numerator, denominator is 100, and then you reduce it to its simplest form. If you're given a percent and asked to write it as a decimal, place the percent as a numerator, denominator is 100, and then divide, because that is, like in our example, 28 divided by 100, 28 divided by 100, 0.28. So what you're doing is move your decimal place 2 places to the left when you are dividing by 100. So that's 0.28, which is what we got when we did our long division. That's just a little shortcut. When given two quantities, to create a percentage, you create your ratio. Okay? And then what we want is 100. So whatever they give us, the number out of however many, number, part over whole, and then we're going to create an equivalent fraction by multiplying that by some number to get 100. So then we multiply that by that same number to get that number, and that is your percent. So we'll see some of those in action. Okay, so first we're going to look at models and how to figure out percents from models. So these are 100 squares, so that means each row or each column has 10. There's 10 rows of 10, or 10 columns of 10. So fractions shaded, part over whole. My whole is 100. My part is how many are shaded. So that's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75. So that's 75 out of 100. I'm going to reduce that, divide them both by 25, and that's 3/4. How do I write 75 out of 100 as a decimal? So we could do long division, but remember I told you just need to move your decimal 2 places to the left. When there is no decimal, it is here. 2 places to the left, my shaded region is 0.75. And now as a percent, percents are out of 100, so is what your numerator is. And I'm going to add that percent symbol. Oh, I forgot to say, when you're doing your fractions, use the backslash. I didn't make it big enough to put 2 boxes, one above the other, so use the backslash, all right? So 75% is shaded. What's not shaded? So the whole thing is 100%. So if 75% is shaded, 100 minus 75, that means 25% is not shaded. Or if I counted, there's 10, there's 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 25%. It's easier for me to just do that subtraction than to count. All right, so what fraction is shaded? Well, that's 100 out of 100, so that is 1. I guess as a fraction, it would be 1 backslash 1. Your decimal shaded, Okay, so that's 100 divided by 100. Move my decimal over 2 places. Anything over itself is 1. So there's your decimal. Your percent is this number. It's your numerator when your denominator is 100. Okay, so what percent is not shaded? 0%, because the whole thing is shaded. That's that blood joke. Always give it 100%. That means give it all, except for when you're giving blood, because you can't give all your blood, because then you'd be dead. All right. Then my last one, I have one entire grouping of 100 plus 10, 20, 30, 40, 41, 42. I have 142 little boxes. One entire box is 100 little boxes. So it's 142 out of 100. Now to reduce, I'm going to divide by 2. 71 over 50, that's it, reduced. As a decimal, so I take this number, and if I'm dividing by 100, that means I am moving my decimal 2 places to the left, 1.42. If I did that long division, just in case you're like, what, I don't get it. Okay, so let's see here. 100 goes into 142 one time. Add a decimal point here, 0 here, bring it down. 100 goes into 424 times. I'm going to add another 0, bring it down. 100 goes into 202 times, 1.42, which is what we got. You're just moving the decimal 2 places over. And then finally your percent. Your percent is your numerator when you have it over 100. So your percent is 142%. When you have a situation, 72 out of 100, so write that as a fraction. 72 out of 100. So to find the percentage, it is the numerator when the denominator is 100. Well, the denominator is already 100, so I know my percentage is 72%. I know this is here, but you don't need it. All you need is to type in 72% in that box. What percentage of the cats do not have long hair? So all the cats are 100 minus 72. So that would be 28% of the cats do not have long hair. Period. So these are story problems, so I forgot to write my sentence up there. 72% of the cats have long hair. So if they don't have long hair, it's 28%. So those two have to add up to 100. So that's what we did there. All right. So now this one's not 100%, not as much, it's not as easy because it's not out of 100 already. So your fractions are always part over whole. The whole is 50 apples. You have a total of 50 apples. 43 are green ones. And you make sure you pay attention to those labels because sometimes there's red and green apples. There are 43 green ones. What percent are the red ones? So let's pay attention to that. All right, so if I want to know percent, I have to have a denominator of 100. So look at these two. What do you do to 50 to get 100? Multiply it by 2. So what are you going to do to 43? Same thing, multiply it by 2, which is 86. Oops. Can't put my percent up there. But once it's out of 100, you know this is your percent. So now I'm going to write a sentence. 86% of the apples are green. Okay, what percent of the apples are not green? Hit pause, and you figure this out on your own, and hit play when you have it figured out. Okay, if you wrote 14%, you are correct. If you did not write 14%, it's 100 minus 86. All right, so let's look at this one. Remember, when we do percents and we write it as a fraction, it's always part over whole. So hit pause and you try to do this one. Okay, so hopefully you have The total is 2,000 people. What percent of the people are students? Okay, and this gives me teachers. So there are 2,000 people, but I want this to be students. So right now I'm finding out how many students. There are 240 teachers, there are 2,000 total people. So I am going to subtract those two numbers to find out students. All right. So now I want an equivalent fraction where the denominator is 100. So to go from 2,000 to 100, I'm going to divide by 20. Because 2,000 divided by 100 is 20. So I know 2,000 divided by 20 is 100. So now I'm going to divide 1,760 by 20. Okay, so I have my equivalent fraction now with my denominator of 100. So that means this is my percent that are students. So 88% of the people are students. So then what percent are teachers? So if you're not a student, you're a teacher. Total people is 100% minus the percent that are students will give you the percent that are teachers. So 100 minus 88. So 12% of the people are teachers. Period. All right, so here we have another chart. You hit pause and you try and do each one. Okay, so hopefully you have 48 over 100 for this one, which means as a decimal is 0.48 because I move it over 2 places to the left. And now as a fraction in simplest form, (12/25). Okay, fraction 108. Hopefully you wrote 108 over 100. In simplest form, that is 1 and 2/25. If you can do that in your head, great. I can't, so you're seeing my work off on the side just because I can't do it in my head. Decimal, I move my decimal point 2 places to the left. 1.08. Okay, fraction, that is 8/100. Remember, to go from percent to fraction, you just put the number over 100. In simplest form, I'm just reducing it. (2/25). And as a decimal, my decimal place is here. When there is no decimal, it is to the right of the number. And then I'm moving it 2 places. And when I move it 2 places, I'm going to do that again without that red box in the way. So decimal here, moving it 2 places. So there it is, but I have a loop here with no number, so I have to put a 0 in. So 0.08. All right, and then hopefully you've done the last one. The last one is 126/100. Now I have to write it into reduced form. Okay, so these fractions, you guys know you have to do it like this. So this whole number, I would do 1 and then space, then 13/50. Make sure there's a space in between there. All right, and then as a decimal, hopefully you guys have 1.26. Decimal's here if you don't see it. move it 2 places to between the 1 and the 2. And that is the end for this section 1, understanding percents.